About this point, big cultural, social shift happened musically and obviously politically and stuff as a sort of it's referred to now as the harsh wind of punk rock.
Well, one thing I would mention is when I was in Canterbury at the university and in the house in St Radigan Street, some of the students living there were from the art college, and their lecturer was Ian Dury, and they were actually starting to they were doing clothes designs, and it was actually, I could sense that was the beginning of punk.
Right.
Even then, because it was originally came from the art colleges, so it wasn't really a big surprise for me. You know, I saw this kind of developing. I thought it was great. You know, I love the sort of wildness. I love, you know, new generation to have their voice. What I didn't like was the way the press were portraying me as some kind of conservative. That's what I really found that irksome, because I always thought what I was doing was pretty radical in my own way. You know, that used to get on my goat.
You actually played with Sham 69 at Reading Festival, didn't you? So
yeah.
That kind of like the meeting of what was deemed the old guard with the new generation.
Well, I've had all kind of really good contacts over the years with illustrious punk figures. We met Johnny Rotten many times, John Lydon. He took a bit of a fancy to Miquette one when he was drunk. It was got a bit messy. And Joe Strummer was a good friend, the late Joe Strummer. Mick Jones lives quite near where I live in Notting Hill. I see him often. And this Sham 69 thing, actually what happened was there was a magazine, I forget what they're called now. They contacted Virgin Records. They wanted to do a feature, punks versus hippies, and I was the sort of unfortunate hippie, and chosen for this encounter. And Jimmy Pursey was the punk, and so we met in this rehearsal room, supposedly to have a sort of, you know, a ding-dong argument. Which would be faithfully recorded by this enthusiastic and eager journalist. And we actually found ourselves agreeing on most things and getting on like a house on fire. And the journalist was getting really frustrated. You know, he said, well, you know, he wanted us to sort of have a sort of row, you know. And in the end, he wanted to do some photos. The photographer turned up, and the photographer said, you know, come on, like, you know, square up or something, you know, like look like you're having an argument. And we said, how can we do that? We're getting on okay. What's the matter with you? And Jimmy Pursey said, I got an idea, Steve, pick up a guitar, let's have a jam. Because there was in their rehearsal room, we did this. And they can photograph that. So I picked up a guitar and we played some rock and roll and bashed away for 10 minutes. They took some photos. And then after that, Jimmy said, that was great, Steve. Hey, I've got an idea. Why don't you come and guest with us on a gig? I said, yeah, great. Where's the gig? And he said, oh, Reading Festival. But, oh, yeah, okay. That's how it happened.
I mean, it's interesting that you say that. I mean, obviously, working on Prog Magazine, we've learnt, we've featured many of the punk musicians and heroes from that era. They're all fans of progressive music. So, yeah, you know. And in fact, classic rock once put me in a similar position when they said, right, we're doing something about 1977. Right, you're going to have Rick Wakeman and you're going to have Jean-Jacques Burnel from the Stranglers. Right, and they wanted to, you know, stir it up. And you walk in and they're old buddies and they're hugging each other and having, you know, getting on absolutely famously. And it's interesting that, you know, the way the press always wanted to slant things really wasn't that close to what the reality was at all.
I mean, the first time I met John Lydon, he looked me straight in the eye and he said, flying teapots. With a big grin. And also I mentioned that just a few weeks ago, Miquette and I did a great gig with the Orb at the Electric in Brixton, where we played through the whole of the first Orb album, which we were quite heavily involved with. And who was on the drums? Paul Cook. You know, so being drawn more and more in an electronic direction. And there's one incident I like to speak about, which I actually mentioned in the book. A little special feature is we're on the Green tour. We were playing in some smaller venues in the Green tour, and we started off with a couple of dates in a club in Plymouth called the Metro. And before we played, there was a disco with a big video screen, and it was like, and the DJ had just got a pre-release copy of Man Machine by Kraftwerk, and he's put it on, and all the kids started dancing and really getting into it. And so he noticed this, and so he put a bit more on from the record, right? Another track. And I was sort of like amazed by this because, you know, obviously I was quite closely involved and a big appreciator of German psychedelic music, you know, from the beginnings of Kraftwerk, Neu, Can, and, you know, it's right up my street. But one tended to associate that music with sitting cross-legged with a big conical joint and just getting into it in that way. And now you've got these sort of like young people dancing to Kraftwerk. And I was looking at the PA system, and the kick drums were coming out like beautiful sort of perfectly formed eggs of sound. And I think, wow, that sounds great, because he's playing it really loud. And I just, I went and got Miquette from the dressing room, and I said, look, they're dancing to Kraftwerk. I mean, I'd never seen that before. It was unheard of. And I had this sort of vision in my brain about, this is going to be massive. And so electronic dance music, and that's something that definitely triggered something. But I didn't have the ability to formulate it. It took quite a long time before I ended up where I ended up. But I was definitely being pulled in a more electronic direction.
Well, yeah, because, I mean, you know, the last Steve Hillage albums, which the two came out at the same time, 42 Next and Not All, you then sort of moved into production. At that point, did you think maybe, you know, performance and that is behind me now, that this is where I see my career going? Because obviously you worked with It Bites as well. You know, that was production, I guess at that point must have been quite an exciting thing for you.
Yeah, well, I mean, I wasn't, you know, all we knew was the beginning of 1980, we felt we got a bit tired of working in the rock band format. We had a bit of a sort of been there, done that sort of feeling, and getting involved with producing, I thought was a good thing to keep me active while I sort of found out how my personal music was going to progress. And even 42 Next and all, we didn't necessarily see that as a destination. We didn't know where we were going to end up, but it was, you know, looking back now, it's very much a sort of stepping stone. Yeah. And then I got, you know, the production thing started to get quite successful, so I ended up spending nearly all my time doing that. And it was, but at the same time, I was sort of very interested in developments in club music. And just general musical, you know, I was interested in what was going on a lot. 42 Next was the last Steve Hillage album, production work. Then it was the next sort of big musical revolution, I suppose, which was the advent of acid house and the dance craze. About 10 years on from when punk sort of happened. Music does have these wonderfully cyclical kind of movements within it. But that, again, opened the door in a way to the next phase of your musical career. Well, that provided a major catalyst. I mean, there was quite a few other things that happened on the road, on the way there. I mean, one thing was one of the tracks I did with Simple Minds, an instrumental called Theme for Great Cities, became a big track in Ibiza in the pre-acid house, sort of mid-80s, and that sort of really perked me up. I thought, hello, there's something going on here, you know. And obviously another thing that was quite funny is that on the studio part of the Live Held album, which is now on the open album on the CD, we did a kind of a parody punk track called 1988 Activator. And so I was always kind of interested to know what would actually eventually happen in 98. I mean, this is just something that came through my mind and I wrote down. And lo and behold, 1988 was the year of the Summer of Love, the second Summer of Love and the start of the Acid House revolution. I always used to joke that, you know, what interested me the most about Acid House was the acid. I've quite a lot of friends in the dance music scene who had a similar thing. It's sort of like, hello. What's going on here then?
The popular myth is that you were at an Orb gig and you heard them playing your music in chill out room.
Well, I'll tell you the backstory.
And you saw, you know, and it helped formulate a connection clearly that had been developing in your head for some time.
Yeah, that was the real catalyst. But what actually happened, I was producing a band for EG Records, and Alex Patterson was working for them as a sort of dance music A&R guy, and they heard that I was getting interested in doing dance music. And they said, "Oh, we got to meet this guy who's working with us." And they introduced me to Alex. And it was just after we'd done the first CD mastering of my solo album. And Alex said he liked Rainbow Dome music, and I said, "Oh, I could get you a CD." So I got him a CD. And then Alex said later, I met him again, and he said, "Oh, we're doing this night at in this side room at the Heaven Club. Come down." This is in autumn of '89. And when we walked in the room, he was actually playing the CD of Rainbow Dome music that I'd given him, mixed with some beats. And Mickette and I, we just looked at each other and we just went, "This is it." We're here. It was like we felt we were home. We had a new musical home. And it was a big moment.
From which, of course, came System 7.
That's what came out of that. I mean, we'd already decided we wanted to do a project with just us together, based on electronic beats. We'd already made that decision earlier in the year, but this was a catalyst to sort of move it forward. And also, that was the thing that this stimulated us to work with a lot of collaborations. And obviously, Alex was our first collaborator.
I get the feeling that as your career has developed, that your fans are actually a lot more accepting these days. That, you know, that you've got the electronic music side to you. That they don't just see you as that guy from the '70s anymore.
Quite a lot of people have made the full journey along with us, you know.
Yeah.
And other people, you know, they can't handle what I've been doing recently. They really prefer the earlier stuff. I mean, fair enough. I like the earlier stuff as well. I mean, I'm proud of the whole thing. That's why I'm really happy to put it all together in one big box. There's nothing in there that doesn't represent a part of my creative being, and I'm happy with it. And, you know, who knows what the future will bring. I think that really important that if you're not hungry to sort of learn and progress and try something a bit different, I mean, that's maybe the time to stop.
The last sort of decade, I suppose, you got involved with Gong again.
Getting back in with Gong was a direct result of this event that, in fact, Johnny Green of Planet Gong was the main organiser of, was this event in 2006 called the Unconvention in Amsterdam at the Melkweg. And that was an amazing event. It was fantastic, a 3-day event, and all the various surviving members of Gong all came along and did their own solo sets, and then we played together as Gong at the end, and it was fantastic. And so after that we said, let's do it some more. And after that we said, let's make an album. That's basically what happened. Right. And it was very enjoyable to do that. Towards the end of the period, now the late David Allen,
yes,
he wanted to changed the formula yet again, and I couldn't really follow where he went. So I wasn't involved in the last lineup of David. Although the final band that he got together, it was David's express wish before he died that they would stick together as Gong. And they've now come up with a really fantastic new album, and I'm very proud to have played on one of the tracks.
What was it like working with them? I mean, did it feel sort of weird because, it was Gong, but there is no David, or?
No, because I'm just sort of, I've been really closely involved in the whole story, and I could, I felt how things were going on. It's great that they're carrying on.
Yeah. I mean, the album's
really
terrific,
good.
Absolutely terrific record.
Because the thing is, when it comes down to it, they're just a great band. They're a really good band. I mean, in fact, they've got the Gong element as well. It's an added bonus, but they are a really great band. I mean, if they can stick together, I think they're going to become very successful in their own right. And I mean, I think that's great.
You did the album with the Japanese instrumental band Rovo recently, which I think was perhaps that opened the door perhaps to some of the more sort of stuck in the mud fans that actually listen. There's a good connection going on here between the electronic side of what Steve does now, but also with the stuff that you got into him for in the first place. That was that was a great project. I hope we can do another tour with them at some point. I mean, it was their idea actually. They came to us with that. We were already friends with Yuji, the violin player. In fact, he guested on the Gong 2032 album and on some System 7 stuff. And we were saying, well, you've guested on our record, Yuji. What would you like us to guest on in return? And he said, I've got an idea. I want to do a tour. And it all came from that. What next for Steve Hillage? Well, I mean, they've got a load of System 7 collaboration projects planned for next year, and then we just have to see how it all pans out. Could you ever envisage making another Steve Hillage album, or? It's possible. With the new Gong setup, you're working with younger musicians like Carver's Tarabi, who's sort of come through inspired, by work that you've done. Steve Wilson is, a label mate, and 42 Next, I gather, is one of his favourite albums. I mean, the idea of perhaps collaborating with him would be quite appealing. Everything is possible, as in the words of Mr. Jim Kerr. Yeah, I'd love to do that at some point. I think Mr. Lucky is a good a good description of if you just look at everything you've done in this box set and beyond, and you just happen to land at the right place at the right time, or make the right decision at the right time, or hook up with the right person at the right time for a quite wonderful career. Yeah, or as where David used to call it, he said, by chance and by trance. That's David's phrase for it. Yeah, it's been okay. I mean, it's not all been easy. I wouldn't say it was a walk in the park. But when you look, not for faint hearts. But when you look back, and it has sometimes got quite hot in the kitchen. But looking back, looking back though over a set like this, it's like something really to be proud of, isn't it? Yeah, overall I'm pretty happy. Yeah.